I never thought a cup of coffee bought for a stranger at a gas station would keep me from losing everything I own. But when that woman grabbed my wrist in the parking lot and said, "When your daughter asks you to sign the blue folder, read page 6 first," something in her voice made me listen. 3 days later, sitting at my kitchen table with a pen in my hand, I turned to page 6 and my whole world fell apart. I'm glad you're here with me tonight. Before we get into this, I'd love to know where you're listening from. Drop your city or country in the comments below. It means more than you know to see who's out there. A quick note. This story blends real experiences with creative elements for reflection. Some names and details have been changed, but the lessons about family, trust, and betrayal are things I hope stay with you long after the video ends. It was the second week of March when my life started cracking down the middle, though I had no idea at the time. The morning was cold and still, the kind of quiet that settles over East Tennessee in late winter when the mountains hold their breath before spring. I'd been waking at 5:15 for as long as I could remember. Helen used to joke that I'd wake up early for my own funeral just to make sure the flowers were right. She'd been gone 3 years now. Pancreatic cancer took her fast, faster than either of us expected. Some mornings I still reached for her pillow. Some evenings I still set 2 glasses of sweet tea on the porch railing before catching myself. Our place sat on 12 acres along the shore of Douglas Lake in Jefferson County. Not a mansion, not a shack. A cedar-sided house that Helen and I built with our savings back in 1989. 3 bedrooms, a wraparound porch, a dock that needed new boards every couple of years. The assessed value came in at $780,000 last spring, mostly because of the waterfront footage. Lakefront property in East Tennessee doesn't lose value. It just sits there appreciating while you grow old on top of it. I was 67 years old, retired from 31 years as a civil engineer for the state. My pension covered the bills. My savings covered the rest. The house was paid off. The truck was paid off. And the only debt I carried was the kind you owe to memory. The weight of missing someone who made every room feel warm. My daughter, Karen, was 41. She lived in Knoxville with her husband, Derek, about 45 minutes west. Derek worked in commercial real estate, always wearing those slim-fit suits and talking about cap rates and portfolio diversification. I never fully understood what he did, but he drove a BMW and lived in a subdivision with a homeowners association, so I figured he was doing all right. Karen taught 3rd grade at a public school in Farragut. She had her mother's smile and her mother's way of making you feel like everything would be okay even when it wouldn't. They had 2 kids. Nate was 14, quiet and bookish, already talking about engineering school. Emma was 11. A firecracker who reminded me so much of Helen at that age it sometimes hurt to look at her. I saw them most Sundays. Karen would bring the kids out to the lake and I'd grill burgers on the deck while Nate fished off the dock and Emma chased the neighbor's cat through the yard. Good days. Simple days. That Tuesday morning in March, I drove into Dandridge to fill up the truck and grab a few things from the hardware store. Dandridge is the kind of town where the gas station clerk knows your name and the post office closes for lunch. I'd been coming to Russell's Gas and Grocery since before they put in the second pump. The bell on the door still worked. The coffee was still burnt. Some things in this world stay exactly the same, and I found comfort in that. I was pouring myself a large coffee when I noticed a woman at the register. She looked about 70, maybe older. Thin frame, silver hair pulled into a loose knot. She wore a brown corduroy jacket that had been mended at the elbow and carried a canvas tote bag with a library logo on it. She was counting coins on the counter, her fingers moving slow and deliberate. Dimes, nickels, pennies lined up in careful rows. Cindy behind the register waited patiently. The woman's total was $4.12. She had $3.78. I could see the math registering on her face. The quiet humiliation of being 34 cents short in front of strangers. I stepped forward. "Let me get that," I said, "and add the coffee to it." The woman turned to look at me. Her eyes were dark brown, almost black, and sharp as a hawk's. There was no confusion in them, no frailty, just a deep, steady intelligence that made me feel like she could see straight through my chest to whatever was behind it. "You don't have to do that," she said. "I know I don't. But my wife always said, money spent on kindness comes back double." She studied me for a long moment, then nodded once. Thank you. Her voice was barely above a whisper, but there was weight in it. Cindy rang everything up. The woman collected her small bag of groceries and walked toward the door. I turned back to pay for my coffee, thinking nothing more of it. Then I heard her voice again. Right behind me. She had come back. She stood close enough that I could smell lavender soap and old paper. Her hand closed around my wrist with a grip that didn't match her frame at all. Cold fingers. Surprising strength. When your daughter brings the blue folder, she said. Her eyes locked on mine. Don't sign it. Read page 6 first. Promise me you'll read page 6. I blinked. Ma'am, I don't know what you're talking about. Her grip tightened. Promise me. Something in the urgency of her voice, those dark, sharp eyes, made the air feel thinner. This wasn't confusion. This wasn't a lonely old woman rambling. This was specific. Okay, I said. I promise. She released my wrist and walked out the door. Through the window, I watched her cross the parking lot with a pace that seemed too quick for her age. She climbed into a faded green Subaru and pulled away before I could think to follow. Cindy was staring at me. You know her? No. Never seen her before. Do you? She comes in once or twice a month. Pays cash. Never talks much. I think she lives out on Old Highway 25 somewhere. Cindy shrugged. Strange lady, but harmless. I drove home with my coffee going cold in the cup holder, replaying the encounter. When your daughter brings the blue folder, how could this woman possibly know anything about my daughter or any folder? Karen hadn't mentioned bringing anything. We'd talked on the phone Sunday night about Nate's science fair project and whether I wanted pot roast or chicken for next week's dinner. Normal conversation. Nothing about folders, documents, or signatures. But the woman's certainty gnawed at me like a splinter under the skin. 3 days later, on Friday evening, Karen's minivan pulled into my driveway just as the sun was setting behind the mountains. The lake turned copper in the fading light. I was on the porch with a glass of tea, same as always. Hey, Daddy. She climbed the steps and kissed my cheek. She smelled like vanilla and classroom markers. Derek's working late, so it's just me tonight. Kids are at his mother's. That was unusual. Karen almost never came alone, and never on a Friday. Everything all right? I asked. Fine. She sat in Helen's rocking chair, which she'd avoided for the first year after the funeral. She rocked slowly, looking out at the lake. Actually, I wanted to talk to you about something. Derek and I have been thinking. My chest tightened, though I didn't know why yet. She reached into her bag and pulled out a folder. Blue, thick, the kind with brass fasteners and a clear plastic cover. The world tilted. It's nothing scary, she said quickly, reading my face. It's just some estate planning stuff. Derek's been working with a lawyer friend to help us get everything organized. You know, in case something happens. It's responsible, Daddy. Mom would have wanted us to think ahead. She opened the folder and spread papers across the porch table. Legal language, dense paragraphs, signature lines highlighted in yellow. She talked me through it casually. This one updates your will. This one sets up a trust. This one gives Derek and me power of attorney so we can help manage things if you ever get sick. It all sounded reasonable. Responsible even. Helen would have approved of planning ahead. And Karen's voice was so calm, so reassuring, that I almost picked up the pen she'd placed on the table. Almost. Read page 6 first. Can I take a night to look these over? I said. Karen's hand, reaching for her tea, paused midair. It was barely a hesitation, maybe half a second, but I saw it. A flash of something behind her eyes. Of course, she said, smiling. Take all the time you need. No rush at all. She stayed another hour. We talked about Nate's grades and Emma's softball tryouts and the leak in my workshop roof. Normal things. But underneath, something felt different, like a song played in the wrong key. When she left, I watched her taillights disappear down the gravel road, then went inside and sat at the kitchen table with that blue folder. I turned to page 6. It took me 3 readings to understand what I was looking at, because the language was designed to be misunderstood. Buried inside a paragraph about Asset Management Authority was a clause that effectively transferred full ownership of my house and property to a trust controlled exclusively by Derek. Not Karen and Derek, just Derek. The clause stated that upon signing, I would retain the right to live in the residence, but would no longer hold title. I would become, in legal terms, a tenant in my own home. My hands shook as I read it a fourth time. There was no ambiguity. Someone had written this document specifically to take my house while making me believe I was simply planning my estate. I didn't sleep that night. I sat in the dark living room staring at the lake through the window, holding Helen's photo from our 30th anniversary. "What would you tell me? Sweetheart, protect yourself, Joe." That's what she'd say. She always called things what they were. Monday morning, I drove to Dandridge and walked into the law office of William Shepard, an attorney I'd known since he handled Helen's estate. I set the blue folder on his desk. Bill studied the documents for 20 minutes without speaking. Then he took off his reading glasses, set them on the desk, and looked at me the way a doctor looks at you before delivering bad news. "Frank, this is a predatory transfer document disguised as a standard estate plan. Page 6 contains what we call a hidden conveyance. When you sign this, you lose your property. Full stop. The trust language is structured so that Derek becomes sole trustee with unilateral authority to sell, mortgage, or otherwise dispose of the asset. You'd have no legal standing to stop him." "That's my daughter's husband," I said. Bill nodded slowly. "I know, and I'm sorry. But whoever drafted this knew exactly what they were doing. This isn't a template from the internet. This was written by someone with legal training to specifically exploit an older person's trust in family. He made copies of everything. Filed a memo with the county clerk. Suggested I contact Adult Protective Services, though I wasn't ready for that yet. On the drive home, I pulled over twice because my vision blurred. Not tears, just the world going sideways. Over the next 2 weeks, I did what any engineer would do. I gathered data. I pulled my credit report and found 3 accounts I'd never opened. 2 credit cards and a home equity line of credit, all in my name, all opened within the past 6 months. Combined balance, $94,000. The home equity line used my property as collateral. Someone had forged my signature, used my social security number, and built a mountain of debt on top of my life. I checked the mailing addresses on the accounts. All 3 went to a P.O. box in Knoxville registered to Derek. The walls kept closing in. I drove to the Jefferson County Courthouse and pulled the property records for my address. Everything looked normal until I reached the most recent filing, dated February 28th, 2 weeks before Karen brought the blue folder. Someone had filed a preliminary lien against my property through a company called Lakeside Holdings, LLC. The registered agent for Lakeside Holdings was Derek. He'd already started the process before Karen even brought me the papers. The blue folder wasn't the beginning. It was supposed to be the final step in something that had been moving for months. That evening, I called Karen, kept my voice steady, asked about the kids, talked about the weather. Then, casual as I could manage, I asked how Derek's work was going. She paused. "Actually, Daddy, things have been a little tight. Derek lost a couple of big deals last year, but he's got something in the works that'll turn everything around. He's really optimistic." Tight. I thought about $94,000 in fraudulent debt. I thought about the lien on my house. I thought about my daughter sitting on my porch, handing me a pen, telling me Mom would have wanted this. After I hung up, I called Sheriff Roy Mitchell. Roy and I went back 30 years. He'd helped me search for Nate when the boy wandered off at the county fair. He'd been a pallbearer at Helen's funeral. I trusted him with my life because I had to. I was about to trust him with my son-in-law's freedom. The investigation moved quickly. Roy brought in a forensic accountant who traced the fraudulent accounts. Derek's fingerprints were all over the paper trail, digital signatures that didn't match mine, applications submitted from IP addresses linked to his office. The P.O. box rental agreement signed in his handwriting, but then something else surfaced. Something I hadn't expected. 3 weeks into the investigation, Roy called me on a Wednesday afternoon. His voice was different. Careful. "Frank, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be honest with me. Have you been feeling sick lately?" Tired? Confused? Anything unusual? The question stopped me cold. Because, yes. For the past month, I'd been exhausted in ways I couldn't explain. Dizzy spells in the morning, hands trembling when I tried to pour coffee. I'd assumed it was stress, the betrayal eating me from the inside. But Roy's tone suggested something worse. Why are you asking? We found something in Derek's office computer. Search history. He'd been researching drug interactions with blood pressure medication, specifically how certain over-the-counter supplements can amplify side effects in elderly patients taking lisinopril. I took lisinopril. Had for 8 years. Roy continued. We also found receipts for large quantities of potassium chloride supplements purchased online. In powder form. The room tilted. Karen had been bringing me smoothies. Every visit for the past 2 months, she'd arrive with a big plastic cup from that juice place in Knoxville. Mango and banana. Daddy. Loaded with vitamins. Good for your heart. I'd drunk every single one. Get to a hospital, Frank. Now. Roy's voice was tight. I'm sending a deputy to your house. The ER at the University of Tennessee Medical Center confirmed it within hours. My potassium levels were dangerously elevated. The doctor, a young woman named Patel, with kind eyes and a voice that didn't waver, explained it to me in terms I could understand. Mr. Mitchell, your serum potassium is at 6.8 milliequivalents per liter. Normal is between 3.5 and 5. At your level, you're at serious risk of cardiac arrest. Someone has been supplementing your diet with potassium chloride over an extended period. Combined with your lisinopril, which already elevates potassium, this is potentially lethal. She didn't say the word poison. She didn't have to. I lay in that hospital bed staring at the ceiling tiles, the IV dripping steadily into my arm, and I thought about my daughter's smile as she handed me those smoothies. The way she'd watch me drink them, the way she'd ask, "Did you finish it all, Daddy? I want to make sure you're getting your nutrients. If you're still here with me right now, drop the number 15 in the comments below. Just 15, nothing else. It tells me who's staying through the whole story. And let me remind you, portions of this story include dramatized elements that may not represent actual events. If this content isn't for you, I respect your choice to move on. The arrests happened on a Tuesday morning in April. I wasn't there to see it, but Roy described it to me afterward. They took Derek first, at his office in Knoxville. He'd been on the phone with a client when the deputies walked in. He didn't resist, just stood there with his mouth open like a man watching his house burn from the inside. Karen was harder. They found her at the school, waiting in the parking lot until her class was dismissed so the children wouldn't see. She cried, kept saying there'd been a mistake, that she didn't know what Derek was doing, that she would never hurt her father. But Roy had her phone records, text messages between her and Derek dating back 8 months. Messages I'd eventually read in the prosecutor's office. Each one another knife. Smoothie delivery done. He drank the whole thing. How long till the supplements work? Doctor says his levels are climbing. Should look like natural heart failure. Once he's gone, we file the trust papers. House sells in 60 days. She knew. My daughter, the woman who had her mother's smile, who taught 8-year-olds to read, who kissed my cheek every Sunday. She knew exactly what those smoothies contained. She'd measured the doses. She'd watched me weaken. She'd counted the days. The charges were severe. Derek faced 23 counts, including elder abuse, identity theft, fraud, forgery, attempted murder, and conspiracy. Karen faced 12 counts, including attempted murder, conspiracy, and elder abuse. Bail was set at $350,000 for Derek, $200,000 for Karen. Neither could make it. My grandchildren went to Derek's mother in Maryville. I spoke to Nate on the phone 2 days after the arrest. His voice was hollow, older than 14. "Grandpa, is it true?" I wanted to lie. God, I wanted to protect him from it. But Helen raised me to tell the truth, even when it costs you. "Yes, son, it's true." He didn't say anything for a long time. Then, very quietly, "Can I still come fish off your dock?" "Anytime," I said. Anytime you want. The trial came in September. Judge Harold Whitfield presiding. The courtroom smelled like old wood and floor polish. I sat in the third row, close enough to see Derek's face when the evidence was presented, but far enough that he couldn't reach me. The prosecutor, a man named Davis, with a voice like gravel, laid everything out. The forged credit applications, the fraudulent lien, the hidden conveyance in the blue folder, the potassium chloride purchases, the text messages, the hospital records showing my levels climbing week by week. Karen took the stand. Her lawyer had coached her well. She cried at all the right moments, claimed Derek had manipulated her, said she didn't understand the supplements were dangerous. Then Davis played the text messages on the courtroom screen. How long till the supplements work? Should look like natural heart failure. The jury watched Karen's face as her own words appeared in 12-point font. There was nowhere to hide. When I testified, my voice didn't shake. I'd spent too many nights preparing for this moment. Mr. Mitchell, Davis asked, if your daughter had come to you and said, Daddy, we're in financial trouble, we need help, what would you have done? I would have written a check that same day, I said. I would have sold this house if I had to. I would have given her everything. Because that's what parents do. But she didn't ask for help. She tried to kill me and take it. The courtroom was silent. Karen stared at the table. Derek stared at the wall. The jury deliberated 6 hours. Guilty on all counts for both defendants. Derek received 18 years. Karen received 12. When the judge read the sentence, Karen looked at me across the courtroom. For just a moment, I saw my little girl again, the one who used to climb into my lap during thunderstorms. Then the bailiff led her away, and she was gone. After the trial, I spent weeks on the porch staring at the lake, not really seeing it. Virginia Caldwell from next door brought food. My buddy Tom Regan from church mowed my yard without asking. The community wrapped around me the way small towns do when one of their own gets hurt. But at night, alone in that house, the silence was deafening. One question haunted me through all of it. The woman at the gas station. Who was she? How did she know about the blue folder before it existed? I went back to Russell's Gas and Grocery. Asked Cindy. Asked the other clerks. Described the woman to anyone who would listen. Silver hair, brown corduroy jacket, dark eyes, drove a green Subaru. Nobody could tell me much. But old Earl, who ran the bait shop next door, said he'd seen that Subaru parked out on Old Highway 25, near the end of the gravel section where the road dead-ended at a cluster of small houses. I drove out there on a Saturday morning in October. The trees along the road were turning, orange and red against a slate-gray sky. The gravel section narrowed until it ended at a clearing with 4 small houses, each one modest and well-kept. The green Subaru sat in the driveway of the last one, a white clapboard cottage with flower boxes in the windows. I knocked. She opened the door almost immediately, as if she'd been expecting me. She looked the same, thin and steady, those dark eyes seeing everything. "Come in," she said. I made coffee. Her name was Ruth Shelton. Her home was small and clean. Books everywhere, stacked on shelves, on tables, on the floor beside a worn armchair. A cat slept on the windowsill. Photographs lined the mantel. A young man in a graduation cap, the same man older in a suit. Then nothing. The timeline stopped. We sat at her kitchen table with coffee that was strong and good. "I need to know how you knew," I said. Ruth wrapped both hands around her mug. "Derek is my son," she said. The words landed like stones in still water. "He was a good boy once," she continued. "Smart. Ambitious. His father left when he was 9, and I raised him alone on a teacher's salary. He put himself through college, got his real estate license, married your daughter." I was proud. She paused. But something changed. Maybe the pressure. Maybe the lifestyle he was trying to maintain. He started cutting corners. Then he started crossing lines. 2 years ago, he came to me with a folder. Blue, just like yours. Said it was estate planning. That I should sign so he could help manage my finances. She looked at me. I signed it. Within 6 months, he'd refinanced my house, drained my savings account, and opened 3 credit cards in my name. I lost everything except this cottage, which was in my maiden name and he didn't know about. My God, I said. I confronted him. He denied it. Karen backed him up, said I was confused, that I was getting old and forgetful. They tried to have me declared incompetent. Her voice was steady, but her hands trembled around the mug. I fought them in court. It cost me 2 years, and every friend who believed their version of events. I won. Barely. The judge dismissed the incompetency petition, but the damage was done. Derek cut me off completely. I haven't seen my grandchildren in over a year. When I saw you at that gas station, she continued, I recognized the look on your face. A man who trusts his family. A man who has no idea what's coming. I'd been watching. I knew Derek was in financial trouble again because the bank called me about an old joint account he'd tried to access. I knew he'd need money. I knew he'd find it the same way he found mine. So you warned me. I warned you because nobody warned me. She met my eyes. And because I couldn't save my own son, but maybe I could save someone else's father. We sat in silence for a long time. 2 people connected by the same man's betrayal, sitting in a cottage at the end of a gravel road while autumn burned through the mountains outside. Thank you, I finally said. You saved my life. She shook her head. You saved yourself. I just told you which page to read. I visited Ruth every week after that. Through the winter, into spring. We talked about our children, about the weight of loving people who hurt you, about whether forgiveness was possible, and what it even meant. By summer, I'd fixed up the guest cabin behind my house, the one Helen always wanted to renovate. Ruth moved in on the 1st of August, bringing her books, her cat, and a quiet strength that made the silence bearable. I visited Karen in prison once. She sat across from me in an orange jumpsuit, her mother's face hollowed out by fluorescent light. I'm sorry, Daddy, she whispered. I know you are, I said. And I forgive you. But forgiveness doesn't mean I forget. It means I'm choosing not to carry the hate. Because your mother wouldn't want me to spend whatever years I have left being angry. She cried. I held her hand through the glass. I haven't been back. Maybe someday. Maybe not. My will is updated. The house goes to a trust for Nate and Emma's education, managed by Bill Shepard. The waterfront lot will be donated to a veterans retreat organization that helps families heal. Helen volunteered with them for years. She'd like that. On a warm evening in September, Ruth and I sat on the porch watching the sun go down over Douglas Lake. The water turned gold, then copper, then deep blue. Somewhere across the lake, a loon called out, and another answered. Ruth looked at the kitchen table visible through the window, where the blue folder still sat. Now a piece of evidence returned after the trial. You ever going to throw that away? She asked. Not yet, I said. I want to remember what it felt like to almost lose everything. She nodded. Then she smiled, small and knowing. Some lessons cost everything before they teach you anything. We sat in silence as the stars came out. 2 people who'd been broken by the same kind of betrayal and somehow found each other on the other side of it. The lake held still. The mountains held their breath. And for the first time in longer than I could remember, the silence didn't feel empty. It felt like peace. If you're listening to this story tonight, hear me when I say this. Talk to your family. Don't let pride, don't let shame, don't let the fear of asking for help drive you or your children to do things that can never be undone. Derek owed money he was too proud to admit. Karen loved her husband more than she loved the truth. And I trusted blindly because I wanted to believe the people I raised could never hurt me. God put Ruth in that gas station at exactly the right moment. He put Roy Mitchell on the other end of the phone when I needed help. He put Bill Shepard in that law office with the knowledge to see what I couldn't. I thought I was alone, but I never was. 3 things I learned the hard way. First, read everything before you sign it. Every word, every page, every line of fine print. The people who love you should never be afraid of your questions. Second, forgiveness is not weakness. It's the hardest thing a person can do, and it will save your life more surely than any lock or camera. Third, Sometimes salvation doesn't come from the people who raised you. Sometimes it comes from a stranger in a gas station with dark eyes and 34 cents short of her groceries, carrying a truth heavier than any sentence. If this story moved you, leave a comment below and tell me what you're thinking. Hit that like button and subscribe so we can keep sharing stories that matter. Your support helps us reach more people who need to hear this. Thank you for staying with me until the very end. God bless you all.